Virtual teachers of Reddit, due to COVID-19, was it shocking to see how some of your kids actually live? And if so, what was the most extreme story? A student wasn't allowed to talk in the morning, so she had to whisper it if she had a question about something. It warms my heart to know that there's a teacher on Reddit that goes by the username Pianofucker16. One of my students seemed to live in an actual mansion. I thought it was a green screen or something, but saw their parents walking around behind them later. So, I actually teach online all the time. Not because of COVID. It's a virtual public school that serves the whole state. I'm not sure where that particular student lived. However, when I taught brick and mortar, that was definitely true about wealth inequality within the same district. I had a kid who was stuck in the middle of a custody thing mid-quarantine. He was so excited to show us his new digs when he moves in May. The place he was excited about had gaping holes in the drywall, graffiti written all over the inside of the house, and broken crap everywhere. But he got run of the whole basement floor, and there was enough land for his homeless buddy, also a student of mine, to park his mobile home out back. I didn't want to know what living conditions he'd come from to be excited about that. I teach 5th grade and I had a student who kept apologizing for getting her work in late. She said she had to watch her younger brothers and feed them dinner because her mom worked 2 jobs outside of the home. While not really shocking considering the district I'm in, I never would have guessed this was her circumstance. She's 10 and had the responsibilities of a parent. Here's a positive one. When my students send me pics of their homework, occasionally there will be a pet on their bed or a paw in the pic. I made a big deal out of how delighted I was to see pets, and then the assignments with pet cameos came rolling in, including farm animals posing with homework. Edit. Thanks for the gold and awards. I enjoy seeing my students happy and they like seeing me happy. I have a talent for oohing and ahhing over any pet. My son was on a Zoom call with his teacher who had 5 grandkids under age 4 and 3 dogs in her 2-bedroom house. Her kids all work in first responder or medical jobs and the daycares were closed. His speech therapist does all of her lessons from her car in the Starbucks parking lot because they have good Wi-Fi. Not surprised. But I gave one help to a kid, 13M, who was babysitting 3 toddlers. It was exhausting just watching him. Can't imagine actually being there 24/7. Dang. That kid deserves an A just for dealing with that. Not something I saw, but I asked what they're enjoying about distance learning and a shocking amount said that they can use the bathroom whenever they want. Every time when one kid in my class had to unmute their mic, there was music in this house at some ridiculous volume. I'm a college kid and my neighbors are always playing really loud music. I'm sure lots of people are dealing with neighbors playing loud music because they're furloughed etc. while students have to study from home. I'm a student, not a teacher, but I saw one of my classmates in a bathtub one day. Nobody even mentioned it, he was just there. Edit. Just to clarify, he had clothes on and he wasn't taking a bath, he was just in a bathtub. I had a professor seemingly teach from a bathroom. She had a desk, but there was definitely a bathtub in the background. A colleague and I were driving around town delivering work and school stuff to our kids. He went to go find one of his students and found them in a rough-built shack behind a gas station. He said it was about the size of his camper and had 4 people living in it. His is a mostly affluent school, so he was really shocked to see that. Put things in perspective a little. Some of my students have to connect through their phone because they don't have internet at home nor a computer. Open bracket. Verizon gave me more data twice so far. I called them and told them thanks, but give it someone who can use it. I work from home and have no kids. The last 4 or 5 months have seen the least amount of data usage on my phone in years. But they couldn't do anything to give it to someone else. I was shocked at how one of my students managed to stay focused in every class despite her wild little brother goofing off in the background and doing everything he could to get her attention. Student here. It was pretty cool to see everyone else in a messy room, whilst shirtless with a headset on. It's definitely the most effective way to work. I'm not a teacher but a student. I've seen somebody walk around with their phone as they took care of their farm animals. He's got some cute rabbits. Finally a wholesome experience. I once showed my dog to my class, which no one else in the chat would. I teach at a private school and was completely mesmerized by some of my students' houses. Immaculately clean throughout quarantine and straight out of a magazine. I taught preschool too, so I at least expected to see some toys strewn about or something in the background. You have online video classes with preschool kids. Can't even imagine what that's like. I teach grades 1-4, though mostly what our education agency translates to English as after school ed or care, and it's hard enough to teach first graders in person. I honestly just saw beds. They all stayed in bed all day. Seriously. Some of my teachers got mad at kids that were in bed. We're supposed to be at a desk or something. I tutored kids online in math for the last few months. Nothing of note except for this one kid. Sweet as a button. Who never worked in a quiet space. They had to work on their kitchen table, so there was always one of the following. 1. Their parents discussing mundane things at a high volume. 2. His brother raging at video games. I'm talking full on maxed out the microphone raging. Every 10 minutes. 3. His brother playing violin. He was not very good. In the spring with distance learning I learned a bunch of the kids live in mansions with designer dogs and brand new dirt bikes. Explained a lot of entitled behavior. I am not a teacher or a student. But the city where I live just had a news story about a man who killed his girlfriend while her 10-year-old girl was in the middle of online school. Her teacher called the police. And when they got there the teacher was still on the laptop, calmly giving directions to the 3 children to stay in the back bedroom until the cops came. It was horrifying. In the rural area of my country, some students had to climb up a tree in order to get a secure Wi-Fi connection. Not only that, they sometimes get attacked by snakes and other wild animals during class. After this thing went viral, the government then finally started to make some effort to help. It's sad that when a thing started to go viral, only then the government start to act. In Malaysia the same thing happened exactly. But thankfully one girl brought attention and the government gave her aid and other students in the area. You know, when I was in school, I didn't even have a desk at home. I used to do my homework at the library after school. Before I went home. I can't imagine trying to work at home as a kid. My home was a madhouse. There was always some kind of insanity going on between all my family members. Some of my students had absolutely no privacy whatsoever. And chaos reigned. How can I be mad that they can't get their work done? Hint. I can't. I'm a student and my dad's a teacher, so we're in class at the same time. He's not my teacher though, and it's not so much the privacy but the noise. I can hear his classes more clearly than my own. Dad and Granddad just casually came in and out of the background in nothing but tighty whities. About halfway through the lesson they stopped. It was all I could do to keep a poker face. We never mentioned it. But lol. Not every day that Walter White swings by your class. I'm not a teacher during COVID but used to teach English virtually to Chinese students overseas, and sometimes seeing where they lived was a little hard for me. Some looked like they lived in just one big room with their whole family. A lot of small apartments for a family of 4 or more if they lived with older generations too. Certainly was eye-opening. Without older generations, how often would you see a family of 4? Sorry if it's an ignorant question. I just don't know much about the one-child policy and stuff. We may not think about it, but it's a bit shocking that so many families out there either can't afford decent internet or live in a place that doesn't have it. Hard to learn online when you can't keep a video stream up for an entire class without lag dropping. I teach English to 4-5-year-olds. Had a parent spoon feed their child throughout the whole lesson. The lesson was an hour and a half. My parents are teachers. Said most of the students have their camera off. But when on they would catch a curious sibling in the background watching the class. Craziest I saw was one time we signed into a class and a dude was already sleeping there. Open mouth and everything. Another time a friend of mine took a screenshot of his bedroom so he could set as the background while he was still in bed. My sweet, quiet auntie teaches grade 1 and the switch to online has been very challenging. She told me about how getting a webcam view into a child's home life really highlights the poverty and broken home lives some of her students are living in. And it just breaks your heart. She was teaching an online class in spring and one of the boys had his little toddler sister running around behind him. The little girl was making enough noise to interrupt the class. So my aunt politely asked him to see if he could get his sister to go to another room or be quiet. She got to watch in horror as he turned and beat the hell out of his sister. On camera. In front of all her students. She couldn't do a thing other than say go get your mother when he stopped and grinned at the camera. I teach 2nd grade. In 3 days of virtual teaching I've had one mom try and help her son with the call in her underwear. One kid tell his dad to turn down the TV so he could learn. To which dad responded cabron and a slew of, what I can only imagine, other Spanish expletives. Because I have never seen anyone find the mute button so fast. And I have realized that over half of my class is either home alone or being watched by other siblings. I teach in an urban district where parents can't afford to stay home. There was one kid who was doing poorly in school. I've talked to his parents and they seemed like normal, middle class people. They seemed to have money and a great personality. When I started up the class, he joined with a black eye. I asked what happened. And he said he hurt himself. All of a sudden this loud screeching noise came. And it was his mother. Except it wasn't the person I saw in the meeting. The person in the meeting was the kid's sister. And the dad was her boyfriend. The mom was very obnoxious. And she was constantly yelling at the kid. When the kid broke down in tears, she walked over to him and smacked his face with a belt. I had to call the police and the kid is living with his sister now. Friend is a teacher in a small, poor, rural town. She was surprised that a couple of normally good students didn't participate in the Zoom classes. She called them and found out that they were too embarrassed of their homes. The shop teacher made backdrops for each student so they'd all have the same. No one stood out. She also noticed some kids were in a car in town. Turns out they didn't have internet so their parents would park outside the library or a local bar to jump on their Wi-Fi. The school then made sure each kid had internet at home. The benefit of a small school district is they can provide those things without much red tape or expense. Even though my friend has been teaching in the town for 30 years. She had no idea how some of the students lived. They hid it from classmates and teachers. The reverse I suppose. But as a student I never pictured how chaotic my professor's home life was until doing a Zoom conference with him. I think he has like 5 kids. All very young. They were constantly coming in and interrupting and trying to show him things. He and his wife both teach at my university so I can't imagine how stressful their lives are. Definitely gave me some perspective. Florida student's mother was killed off camera during a Zoom virtual school class. I was waiting for this to come up. I can't even imagine what that student and the other kids at home are dealing with. I believe they said there were 4 children at home that all witnessed it. I can't remember if anyone besides the teacher saw the on-camera student's reaction, realize what was happening or not though. College student here. I'm just amazed people my age are still f***ing dumb enough to not mute their mics. Like bro, everybody can hear you eating that sandwich. 1. Mute your mic and 2. Chew with your mouth closed you barnyard swine. Honestly. My teenage male summer school students. I haven't actually seen half of their faces. Not because the camera isn't on, it is. But because they'll only let me see their foreheads. There are 13-14 male students I've been teaching since the first week of July and I couldn't pick them out of a lineup. I also routinely see people turning to the side and full on screaming at family members. Or leaving their audio off and hearing family fights. Fun times. I've been an online teacher for 4 years. And seeing the lives of my Lebanese students slowly disintegrate of the last couple years has been the worst. These people are trilingual college educated professionals with bidets and iPads and a vacation house in the mountains. And their electricity comes on for 2 hours every day. It's insane. Students' walls were peeling paint so badly you could see the sheetrock. She is 10 years old and has 6 siblings and was required during every morning class we had to feed and care for her youngest sister who has to be under a year old. Her family knew she was in class via webcam and walked around half naked in the background. Every single day she ate ramen noodles and an ice pop for breakfast. She would often end up leaving class early to care for her baby sister. Even though her mom and much older brother seemed to be home all day. Mum would blatantly have 10-15 people over in the middle of the day in the living room and be loud as FCK and straight up didn't care. I knew her home life wasn't the best. But witnessing it at this capacity was pretty nauseating. Obligatory, not a teacher, but a student. We did Google Meets for our class. And I'm guessing that one of my classmates gave the join info to a friend. Because there was some dude writing just random stuff in the chat. He eventually left, but not before teacher considered not doing online classes. Not extreme. But I mean, unless you had Nelk in your class, I doubt there will be any actually extreme examples. I'm teaching very young students. I don't have extreme stories. But I have read some terribly sad things in this thread and I wanted to share a light-hearted story instead. A lot of my students dress only from the waist up. I know this because I tried to incorporate a lot of dancing and movement in online classes. I had to password protect all of my Zoom classes due to my first and second graders dancing around in their underwear completely carefree. I had one student who lived in a camp trailer with 2 other siblings and both parents. No electricity. They used a generator for 3 hours a day to charge the trailer batteries and devices. My student, high school, was required to check in every day via email or any other platform. She never did check in or send in any work. After 3 missed check-ins, my district automatically notifies CPS. CPS had to investigate twice. The kicker is the mom is a teacher in the same district. Not a teacher, but a student. Also wasn't one of my classes, but a friend's. The kid was in class while taking a ST, weird enough. But then the dude wipes his ass and smells the toilet paper. All of this in on camera and I don't think he realized it. I felt bad for the kid. People noticed and there's no coming back from that. My wife is a high school teacher. When they first went virtual in March, a lot of male students would log on shirtless. Was pretty awkward for her to have to ask them to put a shirt on. Not insanely extreme I guess, but just all the kids that told me they were home alone all day. 3rd graders. I was a student teacher in the spring. And I'm about to start full-time teaching at the same school next week. The school is in a low-income neighborhood, South Los Angeles. Honestly, I was most shocked by how good the living environments appeared to be. You could tell they were small and old apartments with generally too many people living in them. But they were clean and homey. It really relieved me to see how hard their parents were working to give them a good home and a good life. And it really inspired me to work equally hard to give them a quality education that might hopefully help propel a few forward in life, coming from a first-gen college student with a master's degree. It's amazing how much of a quality of life difference a stupid piece of paper can make. And I'm a teacher. So that's saying something. Close bracket.